Starting with the July 21st panel meeting, we are going to be all back in person meetings for the rest of foreseeable future after July to conform with Bagley-Keene rules. I am happy to let you know that on Wednesday, Senate Rules Committee confirmed Stuart Knox as our Labor Secretary, and there was a unanimous vote, and there was very strong support from all in attendance, and ETP was there to support him as well, so we're very happy about that. I want to welcome the following managers who will be presenting the proposals later this morning: Chris Hoover and Phil Boyer. We have several presentations and actions for you this morning, including a policy committee report with Gretchen Newsom, action item on collecting occupational titles with Mario Maslach, action item on presenting information on funding allocations of project caps, also Mario, presentation on NAICS industries and priority industries. We have Brandon Hooker with us from LMID. Also on that subject, we will have a presentation and recommendation regarding priority industries from Jerry Giron. Action items on approving revisions to out-of-state competition by Eric Cheniers. Action items to rescind the bylaws, also by Eric. A presentation on apprenticeship funding with Heather Miguel, and a Civic Makers presentation and recommendation by Judy Brown and Virginia Hamilton. So we have a lot to cover today, and we'll try to be as brief as possible. We are nearing the end of the fiscal year, and we'll be inactivating applications in the queue that are set since we have run out of the set funds for the year. The application window for the 2023-24 fiscal year will open on May 1st. So regarding our fund status, today's panel meeting is for approximately $6.6 million. If all proposals scheduled for this panel meeting are funded today, the panel will be approving 20 projects and 6 delegation orders. After today's meeting, ETP will have approximately $20.4 million in contracting capacity the rest of this fiscal year. So now on to some of our alternative funds provided by the General Fund of the Legislature regarding the Healthcare Workforce Advancement Fund and our Literacy Fund. So it's really good news that we had a large demand for both programs. We're trying to work through them all. This will give us the opportunity to work with a number of new organizations throughout the state. Both application windows did close on March 20th, and we're working through all of those applications. We're planning on funding all the applications that qualify, and we have very good geographical spread as well. Regarding specifically the healthcare fund, which is $25 million, there's really strong interest. As I said, we received 40 applications. 14 of these were MECs and 26 were single employers, for a total amount requested of just over $35 million. Regarding the literacy program, also strong interest, 45 applications. There are 31 MECs and 14 single employers. The total requested amount was just over $16 million. We're trying to get as many of these proposals to the June panel as possible, but you may see a couple of them at the July and August panel meetings. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Tara for her report. Tara?
Thank you, Peter. Good morning, panel members. I have an update on our IT system. Under our Talent Force program, like Peter mentioned, we have put the system up to start accepting applications first at 9 o'clock in the morning. That will be ready to go. And for apprenticeships, the same day and time will start May 1st and June 9th. Also in our system, application fees, we've added the directed lab questions have changed, and messages have gone out about that. And continuing on our next steps is proposal streamlining and working with the on our application. Under our Cali grant system, we're still working on the California Workforce Development Board. We have 10 grants in there today. This week, the one from vendors, allowing funding opportunities and grants all in one. And under enterprise support and security, we have updated our conditions of use and privacy policy comply with our regulations for the finance department. I welcome any questions. End of my report. Eric.
Sarah, being in person, I can just do that. Good morning, panel members, stakeholders, and staff. First, I'd like to thank Mike Cable for handling ETP's legal affairs single-handedly for the last 5 years. He's been invaluable in helping me step into my new role as chief counsel, and then he'll continue to be a valuable part of the legal team here at ETP. We've added a new bill to our legislative tracking memo, Assembly Bill 1766, which actually deals with the Division of Occupational Safety and Health, but on April 13th, it was amended to include a alleged proposal put forth by ETP, to amend some of our unemployment insurance code sections. That bill actually passed out of policy committee yesterday, now with Assembly appropriation. And 3 of the other bills we're tracking that are in the memo that moved from policy committee to appropriations since packet was put together. Those are AB 241, SB 382, and SB 822. Finally, the 2 action items I placed on today's agenda are the beginning of our efforts to update ETP's regulations. There have been no changes to ETP's regulations since 2011, so there are probably quite a few things that need to be updated, removed, added, etc. So the legal unit is taking on the project of doing that review, and I wanted to give you all a heads up that 2 items today are the first baby steps in this process. You'll be seeing more action items on regulations in the future. Thank you. I'll turn it over to Simon.
Good morning, Chairperson, members, stakeholders. Thank you once again for the opportunity to provide a summary of the funding regarding today's funding. As Assistant Director Cooper stated, today's panel meeting does include 6 more than 100,109. If all proposals scheduled for this panel meeting are funded today, we will have a panel approving 20 projects. Additionally, there will be 4 amendments that are going to be included as part of the calendar and more possibly. But they are for a total of 104,000. After today's panel meeting, the employment training panel will have approximately 5 projects. There is approximately $20.4 million for the 22-23. In regards to the demand, we do have 170 offices in development. 23 applications are under review by the application subcommittee. 23 have been submitted applications pending review. We have $3 million. That breaks down as follows: $20 million in demand for single employer contracts, $0.7 million in demand for business, $3.3 million in demand for multiple employer contracts, $454,776 in internships, and we have 0 demand in critical. That is the final portion. We are current with our total allocations as the last month. We are current in our allocation. And with that, I do have the action item related to the consent calendar. However, I would like to request the approval of the consent calendar, but previously stated, consent calendar does include the 4 amendments for California Community Fund for $758. Yeah, this is simply amending existing contracts that we had in place between 3 contracts. With that change, I would like to request that the members identify which proposal or amendment they would like to pull from today's consent calendar, and then for a motion to with the inclusion of the 4 amendments and the exception, and identify a proposal or amendment
thank you very much. First, I'd like to just say, we'd like to extend our support and congratulations to Secretary of Labor, Stuart Hobbs. Definitely the right person for the job, so, congratulations, Stuart. Do we have a?
Chairperson, I'd like to, make a motion to approve the consent calendar for the four amendments, also pulling tab 9 for future consideration. For orange code plan.
Okay, so we have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion to accept the consent calendar with pulling tab number 9 for future consideration. The motion in a second, and we will look to the public for any comment and to the guests.
No public comment on the thing.
Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay, next, we have the policy committee report.
So our ETP policy committee met on Tuesday, April 18th at 1 p.m. for all of the meetings yesterday. Policy manager report was a reminder regarding alternative record keeping. We've used the alternative record keeping template that has been approved by field office staff. Committee also heard a discussion item about the strategy for finisher funding for fiscal year 23-24. You'll hear a presentation on this later this morning. They also heard 2 discussion items regarding priority industries. The first presentation was from the EDV labor market information representative and staff. Both of these 2 items will also be revisited later this morning. Lastly, committee approved an action item to move to council full consideration the collection of occupations at the time of enrollment. This item will be heard before panel today for vote. If anyone has any potential agenda items that they'd like to suggest for future committee meetings, please email them to the TESA or ETP. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion, items out of order. Head of.
I second that motion.
Okay, so there's a motion and second to move proposals from the presentation. We'll look to the public to see if there's any comment. Online?
No hand raised.
Okay, so there's a first and a second, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
I'm sorry, I misspoke. There is 2 hands up. Larry Mandel,
Go ahead, Larry.
to allow you to speak, Larry. And I just need to unmute.
I just want to say, I can't hear almost anything. It's very, very garbled on the audio. And I hear occasional words that we want to have emotion, and then the rest of it is just garbled. The audio is terrible coming out.
Okay, Larry, were you speaking?
Yes, I was speaking. The audio is bad.
Okay, Larry, go ahead and try and speak now. Sorry about that.
Okay, the audio is bad. It's very difficult to understand anything that's being said.
Okay. Mixed messages. That's 2. On you. Director. On here.
Yeah.
Perfect. So we go ahead and, we have a motion and a second to move the proposals, after or before the presentations. So that's what's on the table right now. So we're asking if any of the public have any questions, or I'm sorry, any comments. And I believe we have Larry Mandel.
Yes, we have Larry Mandel, he still has his hand raised.
No, my comment was regarding the understanding what was being said. The audio was poor.
Could you please repeat that, Larry? I apologize. Could you please repeat that, Larry? I apologize.
Hi, Larry. There you go.
Okay, I can hear now, but the audio's been pretty poor, and that's my only comment.
So, yes, and
Thank you for your comment, Larry. I'm going to try to speak up. Go ahead, Barry.
Yeah, Rick, I can hear you, but that's about it. I agree with Larry. It sounds like everyone is whispering otherwise.
Thank you, Barry. I will make sure that they use their loud voice.
Thank you, sir.
We will do our best. As we said, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties, and we will do the best that we can. Okay, with that being said, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, the next order of business is, I believe, an action item on our collecting occupation titles and enrollment for all trainees, Mario Maslin. Oh, we're gonna go ahead and do the project now? We don't have to do any action items to where we ask the public. Okay, good. Okay, moving forward. Let's go ahead and start with the applications.
All right, we'll start first with
Thank you for joining us today. I just had a few quick questions about your wages related to job number 2, actually job number 1. Stated job number 2 under the job creation one. So you're prepared to compensate the material handler position between $19.83 an hour up to $20 an hour for approximately 42 of those trainees. Meanwhile, under job number 1, those same material handlers in that same position are going to be compensated between $20.16 an hour to $45. So I'd like to know how quickly the trainees under job number 2 will they move up in their wages. I don't want to see them limited on $20.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. Yeah, it seems that when we submitted this application, since then we've had merit increases. So now the wage can actually be updated to $20.16 to $25 an hour. And we target the midpoint range when we hire.
How often would those trainees be able to advance to the second one, $5 more, up to $45? Can you describe to me a little bit more as to like where that tier is and how soon they could achieve those wages?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have an exact date on how soon, but it would depend on their experience coming into the role and how fast they actually go through certain trainings to do the role.
Those trainees under job number 2, the job creation one, if they're receiving this training that we're assisting you with today, approximately how soon would they start advancing?
Yeah, I would say maybe 2 years. Yes.
Years of training, they'd be able to advance up to the stated wages of job number 1. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments from the panel? Do we have a motion?
Do I have to go over there?
Good point.
You never know.
We need public comment.
Is there any public comment online or in the audience?
No online comments at this time.
Motion to approve, tab number 18, the Fujifilm Irvine Scientific, contract number ET 23-0311, ETP funding amount of $590,000.
Excellent. There's a motion and a second to approve the application. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carries.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Good morning, panel members. Next, we have tab 19. They're a cruise line contractor, was it 450 workers. Training will take place at Jordan Reed, location, Andover, Olney, Sacramento. Here representing Jordan Reed, this is our bid, correct?
Thank you. At this moment, I would like to recuse myself from this, proposal. So I will turn it over to Rebecca Danforth.
Good morning. My name is Tom Pease, and I am the lead HR business partner for the company for the past 4 years. Thank you for allowing me to present the proposal and for any questions that you may have as well. Yeah, thank you.
Person, if you will. The only question that I had in reviewing your application, I just wanted to make sure that you were not being duplicative of apprenticeship training with your application and your training that you're providing to your construction workers.
I can hardly hear. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, I just want to make sure that your training is not duplicative of DAS-approved apprenticeship training that some of these construction workers might already be receiving in apprenticeship.
Okay. So our program is proprietary to us. It has nothing to do with the union. Yes.
It is not, it doesn't duplicate it.
No.
Any public comments? Motion to approve, tab number 19 for the George Reed, Inc., training proposal, contract number ET 23-0191, and an ETP funding amount of $496,800. A second? Second. Any? Okay, maybe second. You'll say aye? Aye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have tab 20, proposal for Team Healthcare Wellness Center. They are contractors. was 499,500, trained 443 workers. Training will take place in healthcare and wellness by Dahlia and Blair. Here representing healthcare and wellness. Trevor Market, Chief Clinical Development Officer, Peter Demers, Vice President of Operations, Bill Busey,
Good morning. I'm Mia Dimmers, Vice President of Operations.
I'm Jill.
Hi, it's nice to be before you. We are repeat contractors, and this is my third contract. And so life has changed radically since our first approval. And so first of all, I want to say thank you. Secondly, that this funding is so important. I started as a CNA in the industry 35 years ago. I was an LVN, an RN, and now Vice President of Operations, and it was a big scope, you know. So in my licensure, I utilized state funds as a single mom. So this program kind of mimics the process in a different way. It allows us now, post-COVID, where young people have never touched a human. It's so different today than it was our first contract. So that's why it's so important for us this time, is the learning curve and education of our young healthcare workers at starting levels is just astronomical. It's like nothing we've ever seen. So this is really, really vital, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any questions from the?
Yes, sorry. The questions that I have pertain to the wages that are in job number 4 and 5 for the certified nursing assistant / licensed vocational nurse. In my opinion, they are very low, $18 to $20 an hour. So with this training, I'd like for you to be able to tell the panel how those wages are going to advance and increase.
Sure. So we have done a new forecast, and the starting wage will be 19. It'll be 19 to 22. The way that they progress through that process is we reevaluate at 90 days of performance evaluation. And within that 90 days, we do the vital training of the staff, and also do timelines where we meet with them to allow them to progress. So it's usually 90 days, 180 days, and then 1 year to allow merit increases in that time.
Are you fine with staff updating this contract so that those wages are reflected at the $19 to $22
Absolutely.
an hour?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions from the panel? Okay, do we have any comments from the public?
No online comments.
Okay, so do we have a motion?
Motion to approve King's Healthcare and Wellness Center, ETP contract ET 23-0322 in an ETP funding amount of $499,560, also reflective of increasing the wages for job number 4 and 5 as stated by the applicant to $19 to $22 an hour for the CNA / CVN.
There's a motion and a second, and now we'll return to the public for comment. None? Okay, excellent. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. Next, we have tab 21. They are a repeat contractor requesting $409,500. Training will take place at various locations: Alameda, Fresno, Kern, Monterey, Sacramento, San Luis Obispo, Ann Arbor, Shasta, San Juan, Mono, Blair, and Oldham County. Here representing participatory questions are Tatiana Costa, Director of EHS,
Good morning, Tatiana Costa, EHS Director. So thank you again for having us here, and I'm here to answer any questions or concerns that each of you have.
Any questions from the panel? Okay, seeing none, do we
Motion to approve tab number 21, Producers Dairy Foods, contract ET 23-0325 in an ETP funding amount of $499,560.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and we will turn to the public for any comment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thanks, panel. Next, we have tab 22, a proposal from Benson Flavors LLC to, Benson Isis Flavors. They are a first-time contract for $400,900, and 325 workers. Training will take place at Benson Flavors location, Burlock, Houston. You're representing the flavors. Rhonda Gandhi, planning and Victor Delgado, to report the region.
Good morning. My name is Rhonda Godbean. I'm the planning manager for Sentient Dehydrated Flavors Company. And do you have any questions?
Just expressed concern, again, similar to the other applicants, about the lower wages for the job creation ones, and stating that your operations and production new employees would be earning between $16 to $20 an hour. How soon would that cohort be able to advance in their wages up to the second or the third tier of between $20 an hour up to $26 an hour?
Since we've put in the application, we have had a wage increase. And so they are now at $18.06. So they can get up to the higher amount within a year.
Thank you very much. Are you fine with us updating that contract so that the starting wage is
Yes.
$18.06? Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions from the panel?
Okay. Motion to approve tab number 22, Sentient Flavors LLC, ET 23-0324. I'm sorry, that's the contract number, in a total ETP funding amount of $443,900.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second, and we'd like to turn to the public for any comment. Thank you. That being said, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Panel members, please turn to tab 23 for multiple employer contract. This contract is for Los Angeles Trade Technical College. College is a repeat contractor requesting $599,970, train 885 retraining, LA, Orange, San Bernardino. They currently have an active alternative funding contract, which has training currently committed and in process through December 20. On that contract, they are anticipating 100%. We're representing the college today.
Good morning, panel, Mr. Chair. On behalf of LA Trade Tech College, I'd like to express my appreciation to all of you. Yes, we are coming before you for this proposal, but we ride the wave of experience, so to speak. So for this old prior contract, we were at a 75% performance with about 889 people trained. And so we're very excited to be here presenting to you all, and I'm open for questions and answers.
Are there any questions or comments from the panel?
As you stated, sir, your past performance is only hovering at around 76%. Sorry, I'm scrolling wildly. And a payment earned of $343,000. You come here before us today for your 12th contract with an amount that is exceeding that from your past performance. How are you going to do things differently this time to achieve 100%?
You know, the addition of the CCF contract required us to upgrade our efficiency, not just in staffing, but the operation. So now we can easily transition that upgraded technology and capabilities to make sure that we perform better.
This being your 12th contract, could you elaborate for me a little bit more about the experience of the actual trainees, the workers being trained, and how they are advancing themselves in their careers?
Yeah, I've been told numerous times that some folks who are at the front lines moving boxes, they're able to learn new skills like leadership, management, time management as well. Those types of skills are able to transferred towards upper level positions. And so it's really gratifying for us to be able to train these folks so they can move up their career ladder.
I'd like to encourage you, if you come before us for a 13th contract, I want to hear more of those stories, the personal stories of your trainees. So you can have time to work on that, but I'd like to hear more of those personal stories, please.
Will do.
Thank you. Motion to approve tab 23 for the Los Angeles Trade Technical College, agreement number ET 23-0317, in an ETP funding amount of $599,970.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second with the application, and we'd like to see if there's any comments from the public. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay? Ayes have it, motion carries. Very much. Okay, now we will go ahead and go to the action item and presentation. Here, before we do that, tab 9, let's pull some calendar. We'll hear at the next. So do we have a motion to move it to the next panel meeting? Would that be appropriate, Eric? Table that.
Perfect. Motion to table tab number 9, the Orange Title Company, to a upcoming panel meeting.
Second.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second, and we'd like to see if there's any comment from the public. Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Ayes have it, motion carries. Thank you very much. Now I believe we'll turn over to Mario. Thank you, panel members. The first thing that we have for you is the selection of those station titles.
This is an item that appeared before the policy committee, and now it's coming up for the full panel vote. It's pretty straightforward. As part of our Health and Workforce Advancement Fund guidelines, we've included a collection of occupations, both an enrollment and a final invoice. And now we're seeking to expand that to the full program. The reason for this is that currently, as you can see in your panel packets, multiple occupations are put under each job number. And then once we start enrolling trainees into those job numbers, there's no association between individual trainees and occupations. So there's a disconnect there in all of the data that's related to trainees between the job numbers, including wages and other things like that. So as an iterative approach, the first step, we would like to now just start collecting those occupations exactly as they are, whatever the contractor is using, both at enrollment and then finally at final invoice. We're going to make this as easy as possible. During development, occupations are collected. There will be a pick list at enrollment that you can select whichever the allowed occupations are. At final invoice, it will pre-populate for every trainee what the occupation was that they used at enrollment. So they would only have to make modifications for the ones that are changing from enrollment. And at some future time, we'll be able to report when a contractor comes back to panel for more funding, to report which trainees and how many have advanced to a new occupational position. Again, this is meant to be the first in a several steps. It's going to tighten things around wages, career progression, and things like that, and get even more comparability between contracts where we'll start using occupations beyond just what one employer uses, so we can compare cross-sectionally across the entire panel's business, basically. So with all of that said, pretty straightforward, the staff recommends that the panel approve the addition of occupation titles at enrollment and final invoice for all trainees. And I welcome any questions from the panel or public.
Any questions from any panel members?
I'm so very happy that this is happening. It's like a big, exciting moment for me. But with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve the addition of occupation titles at enrollment and at final invoice for all trainees.
Excellent. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any comments from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. Thank you very much, Laura.
Thank you. And I do have the next item as well. This is the yearly presentation on project caps, reimbursement rates, moratoria, and allocations. I have a PowerPoint presentation. Unfortunately, with the technical difficulties that we have, I believe that people who are online can see it. You have it in your panel packet, so you can see it there. So I'll try to fill in the detail verbally to everyone who's present here in person and doesn't have the benefit of having it projected for them. So this is a yearly thing. Every year we come around this time of year where we basically outline and propose to the panel the project caps, reimbursement rates, moratoria, and allocations. And this year, there are no alternative funds that we're projecting for next year. So this is all about just core funding. Okay. I'm asked to speak even louder. So project caps. Staff recommends that for the project year 23-24, mostly the caps will remain the same. For single employers, they would remain at $500,000. For critical proposals, we're proposing that they increase from $600,000 to $750,000. For multiple employer contracts, increasing from $600,000 to $750,000. And for apprenticeship proposals, keeping them the same at $500,000. Now, some of the reasoning behind this is that during the last fiscal year, we saw overwhelming demand for single employer contracts and apprenticeships. The apprenticeships generally, all the funding goes out by September or October. But we had a lagging demand for MECs and critical proposals. We're seeking to address that, even though we know that some of that demand was offset by CCCF funding. We're expecting that this move will help entice more multiple employer contracts, making it worth it for them to come for ETP funding. Moving on to reimbursement rates, we're proposing that the reimbursement rates remain the same as they were last year, namely for CBT, computer-based training, that they remain at $9 an hour, $16 an hour for apprenticeship training, $20 an hour for non-priority industry training, and $23 an hour for priority industry retraining and all other forms of training that we offer. Now, during the policy committee, we had heard some requests from the public for that we might want to increase this due to inflation. Because we have a limited budget this year, it's slightly lower than it was last year. That would mean that if we were increasing it now, we could serve far fewer trainees than we were able to do in prior years. That's why we're continuing with this recommendation that that we keep the same reimbursement rates as last year. Also, although inflation has increased, it doesn't appear that wages have increased commensurately throughout the economy. So we're still recommending the same reimbursement rates. Moving on to moratoriums. We would like to continue the moratorium on adult entertainment, commission and retail sales, gambling, mortgage banking, multi-level marketing, training for employees of training agencies, partners and principals in professional firms, car dealerships, and no revisions to increase funding for any of the contracts. And finally, we move on to allocations for this fiscal year. The formula remains the same. We have about $86.4 million, just short of $86.4 million worth of ETF funds for the next year. We are proposing for single employers that we put out $32,395,605 in training funds, $5,399,268 for small businesses. For multiple employer contracts and apprenticeships would be $21,597,70 each. And finally, critical proposals, $5,399,268. Again, for the total of $86,388,281 in contracting capacity for next year. With all those things said, staff is requesting approval for the following items as described above: the project caps, reimbursement rates, moratorium, and allocations with an allowance for staff to rebalance allocation at the end of a fiscal year based on demand. As you know, this year we had to come back last month to ask for allowing us to move things around. We're just baking it into this request now so that the final quarter of next year we can just shift based on demand without having to come back to the panel. With that, if there are any questions, concerns, or comments, happy to address them.
Couple items. You can, thank you. With that shift that you're just talking, I would like the panel to be educated on that. So as you're making those considerations to inform us of that. Related to the project caps, I can support that. The reimbursement rates, I would like that concept of possibly increasing them to come back to policy committee for next year for consideration. And for staff, especially our policy staff under LISPESA, to be able to kind of equate our wages increasing, and then therefore can we increase those reimbursement rates. So if we could make that consideration for the following year, you get my support for today for keeping it the same. And then the moratoriums, I absolutely support that, and as well as the allocation.
Excellent.
I would like to make a motion to approve the following items as presented and described: the project caps, the reimbursement rates, the moratoriums, and the allocation.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. I'd like to turn to the public to see if there's any public comment. Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carried.
Thank you, panel chair and panel members.
Okay, next we have presentation from Brandon Hooker on the industry policy industries economic highlights.
Hi, Brandon. Whoever's starting, you can do the phone, please. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'll try to speak up. My name is Jerry Jerome, and I'm the Data Analytics Unit Manager with ETP. And Brandon and I will be giving separate presentations regarding the priority industries. I'll be providing a little bit of background on this effort before Brandon presents his economic highlights, and then I'll return with some additional information and recommendations. It's going to be a wealth of information, so everyone, please bear with us. The panel establishes priorities for the fiscal year based on the demand of employers for trained workers and on changes in the state's economy. ETP reviews the North American Industry Classification System revisions for any changes that affect the changing economy. At last year's 2022 panel, we presented similar backgrounds to the NAICS classification system and how ETP currently uses them. We presented the 2022 NAICS code revisions and requested for panel to approve those changes. When ETP reviewed the 2022 revisions, the analysis prompted a reevaluation of ETP's current priority industry designation process and how we can streamline it in a more meaningful way. The goal is to adapt to industry changes that benefit California businesses and employees. We thought about ways to approach and how we can collaborate with sources outside of ETP to collect reliable scientific data and factors to consider when identifying industries key to the state's economic health. And then we will return back to the panel with new recommendations. So what is the North American Industry Classification System? It's developed as a standard for use by federal statistical agencies. It's designed to classify businesses when collecting, analyzing, and publishing statistical data about the United States economy. So it essentially groups business establishments into industries according to similarity in the processes used to produce goods and services. And then every 5 years, the Office of Management and Budget and Bureau of Labor Statistics reviews the NAICS establishment for potential revisions to keep pace with the changing economy. The last revision was done last year in 2022. The panel designates certain industry sectors as priority industries. Employers that are determined to be with a designated priority industry may obtain benefits such as a higher reimbursement rate or lower wage requirement within the panel with panel approval on a case-by-case basis. We do want to note that companies who are not designated a priority industry can still be funded. They just may not receive those higher reimbursement rates or lower wage requirement opportunities that just mentioned. For those that can see the screen here, we also have listed our priority industries. I'll go ahead and read them out. What ETP currently labeled as a priority industry is agriculture, healthcare, biotechnology and life sciences, construction, green, clean technology, goods movement and transportation logistics, information technology services, multimedia entertainment, and technical services. A little bit of background on how ETP uses the NAICS industry code. ETP reviews applicants' NAICS codes to determine if the NAICS code is designated as an industry threatened by out-of-state competition. And if an employer's NAICS code is a priority industry code, they may be provided a higher reimbursement rate than the standard rate and may be provided a lower wage requirement for set projects as previously mentioned. Or when ETP has a moratorium on specific industries, the NAICS code will determine if the employer's eligibility to apply for ETP funding. ETP does review and identify priority industries as part of our legislative requirements. And on the screen here, we have priority-specific mentions that can be found in our legislation and regulations. And those can also be found within the ETP website, and the presentation can also be found on the website for those in the room as well. All right. So we know that ETP priority designations have had an informal process and have remained unchanged over the years. Designations were based on an executive level review of the current state and California and Governor's Office administration initiatives. Also, ETP industry names do not match the Bureau of Labor Statistics NAICS classifications due to some of those Governor Office administrative initiatives. For example, one of our priority industries is labeled multimedia entertainment, but some of those industry-specific codes can be found within the BLS information sector. Another example is ETP's green clean technology industry, and this industry encompasses various NAICS sectors such as manufacturing and waste management and remediation services within the BLS classification system. Since the EDD Labor Market Information Division's mission is to help people understand California's economy and make labor-informed market choices, ETP is collaborating with LMID to gain data-driven analysis on labor market information and trends. This includes data such as job growth and wage trends, concepts already adopted within our legislative statutes. Now I'd like to introduce Brandon Hooker with EDD's Labor Market Information Division, who'll be providing the presentation on the NAICS industry analysis. And then once he's complete, you'll hear from me on our recommendations for priority industries.
Great, good morning. Thank you for having me. Thank you, panel chair, and thank you, panel members. I'm going to be outlining the research that was conducted by the EDD's Labor Market Information Division in regards to our industries that we take into consideration for prioritization for the ETP. We looked at the major super sectors and used data sets such as the current employment statistics program, basically a survey of businesses within California to measure monthly employment. Also the quarterly census of employment and wages, which is basically a census of businesses in California. It's representative of 98% of businesses, and those are the ones that participate in California's unemployment insurance program. Also, the data set I'll be referencing is our employment forecast, our employment projections over 2 years to look at the overall industry trends over time in California. I'm going to be starting out with agriculture, basically the farm jobs in California, over 400,000 jobs in California in July of 2022, and the largest kind of jobs were tied to agriculture support and crop production. What you'll notice about the data is that a lot of the jobs don't earn wages that are at the statewide average of 2022 quarter two of $1,565 per week, but that's also associated with the lower skills tied to agricultural work in general, so they're going to garner lower wages. What we've noticed about agriculture in general, it's not going to forecast as high as the statewide average, but it has not been impacted as much through mechanization as we earlier thought. We thought that might be the end of a lot of the jobs there, but as we're looking at some of the data moving forward for agriculture, we found that overall cash receipts for a lot of the farmers have been increasing. Overall increases have been as high as $51 billion in 2021. And when we're looking at 2021 as well, the overall number of exports in California increased 7% in 2021 to over $20 billion. So that's why we have the recommendation of crop production. Crop production will deal with industries that are dealing with greenhouses, farms, and a lot of the agricultural nurseries in general. Looking at mining and logging industry, it had over 19,000 jobs in December of 2022. But when we're looking at the overall jobs within them, they have wages that are in excess of the statewide average. But the industry that really pushes that was the oil and gas industry, obviously with some of the engineers tied to it and a lot of the higher tech jobs, the wages are going to be generally higher than the statewide average. But when we're looking at the overall forecast for, say, oil and gas, we know that California is really focused on their carbon initiatives and clean energy. So we're seeing a decline over the next 2 years in those jobs, and that kind of influenced the industry that we were recommending for the ETP to take into consideration, which was mining except oil and gas. As you may or may not know, within Riverside and Imperial counties, there's the Salton Sea, which potentially has the largest lithium deposits in the world. And that could potentially add jobs tied to lithium and overall demand because it does support a lot of the tech sectors with those raw materials. Moving ahead to construction, it had over 900,000 jobs in December of 2022, and the largest concentration of those jobs were tied to the construction of buildings and a lot of the specialty trade contractors that do support work, a lot of the plumbing involved, a lot of the finishing involved, the roofing, etc. When we're looking at overall the projections of construction in the future, it's comparable to the statewide forecast projection that we have of 2.8%. What we've noticed is that there's going to be a lot of government funding in the future tied to not only tax rebates for homeowners, but also tax developments for mental health housing. Ending homelessness in California was a major commitment by the governor's office, and there's funding tied to that. Also, we're seeing high-speed rail ongoing, and federal legislation is funding that as well. So there's going to be support for those types of jobs in the future. And that's why construction of buildings and specialty trade contractors were two of the major industry subsectors that we saw as potential moving forward, and ETP should take that into consideration for prioritization. When we're looking at overall manufacturing within the state, it has over 1.3 million jobs, and the wages for manufacturing were in excess of the statewide average, and a lot of that's tied to a lot of the high-tech manufacturing that we have in California. Yes, there has been news as the impact of, say, robotics and a lot of advanced mechanization is taking some of the jobs, but we've also seen growth in demand for workers there. Manufacturing in general, when you're looking at the demographics of the workforce, it's tending to get a little bit older, and the turnover is going to be higher as people reach retirement. So there's going to be job openings there, especially in advanced manufacturing, where there's going to be some high-wage jobs. When we're looking at the manufacturing sector on the whole, we see a lot of the growth coming out of chemical manufacturing. When I say chemical manufacturing, just think of pharmaceuticals and the drug companies within California. Also look into computer product manufacturing. That's tied to a lot of the semiconductor industry within California. California leads in semiconductor jobs in the nation with over 80,000. The next state that have the second amount is Texas with only 40,000. There is legislation tied to the CHIPS Act, which is tied to bringing more of the domestic production of semiconductors back to the United States. We all know about the shortage and how it affected the products coming into California as well as other states. So that legislation is going to be funding initiatives so California could potentially take advantage of that. That's why that industry was prioritized. Looking at trade, transportation, and utilities, over 3 million jobs are there. The largest concentration of jobs were in retail trade with over 1.6 million jobs, but those wages were lower than the statewide average, obviously with the lower skill tied to general retail trade jobs. But when we're looking at the overall forecast in the future, transportation, warehousing, and utilities, which is inclusive of jobs tied to California's ports, also utilities tied to clean energy, biothermal, wind energy, solar power, those types of firms, we see them growing in the near future. And that's why it made our list of industries that ETP should take into consideration. The warehousing and storage tied to our ports, also the support for transportation, that includes a lot of our airports. We're seeing a lot of the people coming back to California as it's open. Tourism is booming in California once again. We're seeing that in the overall number of passengers coming to California, and also the forecast that we see in terms of travel spending in California increasing dramatically over the next 3 years. When we're looking at overall information, the information sector had over 600 jobs in it, and the bulk of the jobs came out of publishing industries. Publishing industries, I mean a lot of our software firms, those tied to the Silicon Valley. Also, our motion picture and sound recording has a large concentration of jobs in California. And a lot of these wages in the information sector are in excess of the statewide average. Obviously, with the software firms, you're looking at high-tech jobs. Advanced training is necessary for that, so they garner higher wages. And when we're looking at the overall forecast for the information sector, it's going to be a little bit lower than the statewide average. But when you're looking at the individual subsectors and the components within information, such as motion pictures and sound recording, that's going to be in excess of the statewide average or comparable to that. And also looking at the information sector, software firms, potentially right now you're seeing a lot of news about a lot of them contracting because of risk of the recession. But what we've noticed is that when they come out of that, they are free spending and they are investing in workers once again. So we're going to see growth there. And in terms of the industries, we want ETP to take into consideration, that would be the motion picture and sound recording. There is the film tax credit 3.0, which has over $1.5 billion going to bringing back some of the filming in California. We lost it to other states because of their tax credit program, but now we're seeing a number of them coming back. And that's just not the movies and television. It's a lot of the web hosting opportunities as well are coming back to California. So this would be a great opportunity to invest there. In terms of financial activities, there were over 800,000 jobs in December of 2022, and all of the wages tied to the finance and insurance side were in excess of the statewide average. When you're thinking about the finance and insurance side, it's not just the banks, it's the brokerage houses and firms, also the venture capital firms, also the financial planning firms. Those firms actually have a lot of workers that have a lot of experience, a lot of technical experience, and garner higher wages. When we're looking at the overall forecast, we've noticed that finance has garnered higher wages, has high-tech jobs in it, but we've noticed the growth has been relatively slower. But when people are employed there, they are getting wages in excess of the statewide average. And when we're looking at the industry that we're asking ETP to potentially prioritize, it's securities, commodities, and contracts, and that's inclusive of venture capital firms, as well as a lot of the brokerage firms within the state. When we're looking at professional and business services had over 3 million jobs, and we're seeing high growth in our advanced technical industries. And when we're looking at overall priority for the industries for ETP to take into consideration. Look into the architectural firms where we're seeing job growth and increased growth in construction, not only on the residential side, but on the non-residential side where we're building a lot of the warehouses and structure and infrastructure. Also, the computer systems design firms are also doing well as our software and R&D, which is actually the foundation and what people look at when they think about California, when they're talking about high tech in America. Moving forward to educational and health services, it had over 3 million jobs in December of 2022, and the wages were comparable to the statewide average. But when we're looking at the overall employment forecast, we're seeing the largest amount of growth tied to healthcare and social assistance. Obviously, with the demographics in California, people are getting older, so there's a higher demand for healthcare and healthcare-related services. Also, in response to a lot of things such as the wildfires in California, there's a social assistance aspect there. So we're going to see also an increase tied to the demand for workers for that. Now, in terms of the overall priority industries that we were trying to focus on for the ETP, ambulatory healthcare services, that's tied to the offices of physicians, offices of dentists, etc., and also the individual and family services that provide a lot of the social supports on the local level. We see growth there. So those are two of the industries we'd like ETP to take into consideration. In terms of leisure and hospitality, it had over 1.9 million jobs, and it's basically broken up into accommodation and food services, as well as arts, entertainment, and recreation. Those types of jobs are also tied to tourism. We know we've had a tourism boom in California. So when we're looking at the overall job numbers and their forecast in the future, we see high growth in excess of the statewide average because of the increase in tourism and people coming into the state. And looking at the potential priority industries that ETP can take into consideration, drilling down, we're looking at the performing arts and the spectator sports, also a lot of our food services and a lot of our drinking places in the state, which is inclusive of our full service restaurants and our limited services restaurants. And just two more sectors to go as I go through. The other services sector had over 500,000 jobs in December of 2022, and it ranges the gambit of personal care services that can include hair salons and nail salons. Also, a lot of the civic organizations and political organizations within the state are going to potentially see growth in the future. The wages within these types of firms are generally lower than the statewide average because of the educational requirements required for most of the jobs. But when we're looking at the overall forecast in the future, the other services sector is going to be in excess of the statewide average and largely tied to personal care and a lot of the civic organizations in the state. And that's where we're seeing the industries that we want ETP to potentially consider were tied to those personal care services and social advocacy organizations. And then just wrapping up with public administration, we were asked to analyze the 11 major super sectors. That's why public administration government was included in the analysis. But in terms of the government sector, we had over 2.5 million jobs in December of 2022. The largest wages came out of the federal government side, but we are seeing the best growth coming out of state government and local government. And that influenced our determination that ETP should take those two into consideration for potential funding. And that wraps up my presentation. If there are any questions from the panel?
Brandon, thank you so much for your presentation. Just a quick comment for our panel members. I apologize, there may be a couple of sectors that were missing from your panel packet. This is posted on our website, that's correct?
I believe so, yes. It was submitted, yes.
So it is available there, just for panel members. The last couple of sectors were missing.
Okay.
But hopefully that's any questions.
And I was curious whether consider that to be integrated inside these priority industries or a separate kind of job role.
Within professional and business services, there is that scientific R&D component, but in computer systems design and architectural engineering firms, as well as a lot of the management consulting firms, there is an R&D component. one limitation of the NAICS codes themselves. It's where a firm is getting the most of their profits and earnings from a certain component. So just a simplified example would be, say, we're driven by the gas stations that have a restaurant in them. If it's the same owner and the most comes out of the gas station, that restaurant could potentially, if there's no update to it, could be classified in that industry. That's one of the limitations of it when we're drilling down in NAICS, and that's why they're always refreshing it every 5 years to try and keep up with changes in the economy.
Okay, so would you consider that a gap today in terms of having that next code?
The NAICS code, you can drill down even further, but within that, our R&D is pretty specific to that area.
All right.
Yeah.
I was just interested in a future time of being able to hear a little bit more from you about the transition to the green economy and the green energy, but also transitioning those jobs that we're in, the gas and oil refineries, and making sure that there's lateral connections related to wages,
Yep.
whether or not we're doing that kind of research and effort.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Excellent. Any other comments or questions from the panel?
All right. So thanks, Brandon and his team, for the thorough analysis on how California establishments are trending. So we took that information, and ETP considered factors for priority industry recommendations when analyzing the LMID data, and also compared it to ETP's current designation policies and regulations. We kept in mind our legislation and regulation statutes, where they state that we should foster creation of high-wage, high-skilled jobs, or foster retention of high-wage, high-skilled jobs in manufacturing and other industries that are threatened by out-of-state and global competition, or that promote the retention and expansion of the state's manufacturing workforce. We also want to continue to support our legislative leaders with the initiatives that impact the state's economy, such as building climate resilience and increasing wildfire mitigation work, or renewable backup power and energy development, separating unwanted waste minerals such as metallic and non-metallic minerals in mining and development, and gun control initiatives. We also are taking into account LMID's data-driven analysis and projections, including the industry employment, wages, and business trends. Right. So based on our analysis, LMID made some industry suggestions that we agreed with, and some that we chose not to recommend based on our considered factors. The next slide here. So on the next slide, we have a comparison table of ETP's current priority industry NAICS codes and compared them to the recommended NAICS codes that LMID provided. And it might be a little small for you guys to see, but again, it is on the website. So a little bit of background about that. There's about 1,028 active NAICS codes via the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and ETP currently prioritizes 51% of those as priority industry. So it's about 527 priority industry codes. And then the table in the document there is just broken down by the 2-digit NAICS code, ETP's current priority industry sectors, the actual naming conventions of the NAICS industry names, ETP's current priority industry codes, and then our recommended changes. So the green font in the table is indicative of 109 codes that we are recommending to be added to ETP priority industries. And there's 7 codes that are in red font that are currently priority designations that we are recommending to remove as priority industry designations. Again, we want to reiterate that a priority industry does not in any way indicate any eligibility or guarantee any funding. It's just a designation that will provide benefits of a higher reimbursement rate or a lower wage requirement at panel approval on a case-by-case basis. Okay. On the next slide here, I spoke earlier about ETP's priority industry or priority naming conventions not being that they do not match the BLS name definitions, and they remain the same over time. And it's gotten a little challenging to classify which ETP industries belong to which 2-digit NAICS codes. So we'd like to align with the federal standards and adopt the NAICS the NAICS database names and definitions when designating any industry as an ETP priority industry. All right. Next slide, please. So we'd like to, we're trying to wrap this up here. We'd like to take a standardized approach to identify industries that are most vital to California on a regular basis. And in order to do that, we may need to reset some of ETP's historical methods as the priority designation process was informal in the past. So we've identified EDD's LMID as the subject matter experts since they already collect and analyze California's labor force, wages, employment projection, and other key data to produce the statistical analysis. So our recommendation for the priority industries is to keep ETP's current priority industries and adopting LMID's recommendation, minus some codes that do not align with ETP's legislation or governor office initiative. And then also renaming ETP's priority industry names consistent with the NAICS database names. And then for future, we'd also like to keep this process going forward where we regularly monitor the NAICS codes and the subsectors to make sure that we're continuously targeting key industries in California. All right, so I know it was information overload, but felt it was necessary to provide a background and the summary of all of the 2-digit NAICS codes. So I'd be happy to discuss any questions or refer back to any slides that anyone may need. But we are requesting approval to adopt the NAICS code recommendation and renaming ETP priority names consistent with the NAICS database name.
Are there any questions or comments from the panel?
Very informative. Thank you both very, very much. The one item that jumped out at me was the removal of the nursing care facilities. And I just wanted to have you elaborate as to why that one was going to be removed as a priority.
Sure.
In ambulatory care services.
Sure. So some staff had some concerns with high turnover rate, and those industries themselves were not performing as well. So that's just one of the things where it was like we could utilize money elsewhere in prioritizing some of those NAICS codes.
I'll be watching the ambulatory healthcare services as I usually do for their turnover rate as well and low wages. So, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions for the panel?
Quick comment. Yeah, I just want to thank LMID for being a good partner on this project. And Jerry, you and your team, all your work. I know it's a ton of data to go through. It's really important to us. And I know this is just kind of the first bite at the apple. We have a interagency agreement with LMID to carry on this work. So it'll be coming back to the panel annually, and we can fine tune it and have better ways to look at this data to be more specific. Thanks.
Okay, Heather. Before we hear public comment, we have a motion and a second from the panel.
Awesome. Motion to keep ETP's current priority industries and adopting LMID's recommendations minus some codes that don't align with ETP legislation or governor's office initiative, which includes 102 NAICS code changes, adding 109 to priority industries and removing 7 existing priority industry designations. Also included in the motion is renaming ETP priority industry names consistent with the NAICS database names. And at a future time, we will take up the other items.
Thank you.
I really didn't want to have to read that. So there's a motion and a second, and prior to voting, we will turn to public comment.
Go ahead, Annie.
Well, good morning. Thank you very much. This is Annie Rafferty at Butte Glen Community College District, and I just wanted to second the follow-up question regarding the nursing care facilities. We didn't really have that opportunity to discuss that further during the policy meeting, and we realized as MEX in our follow-up that we did not talk about the nursing care facilities where we as colleges have plans and strategic training plans with those facilities in upskilling the certified nursing assistants. And so assisting with the reduction of turnover, the increase of retention, and working with those facilities is an initiative with the Upskill California Community Colleges, and would like consideration for them to continue to be a priority with our healthcare projects as we move forward, since they're critical in the healthcare career pathway in serving, our community and patients, and getting them higher wages and increased skills.
Excellent. Thank you for that comment, Amy.
Thank you.
We have one more person.
Yeah, so I will. Let me check.
Did they state the title of it?
It doesn't appear to be. 327, no, it doesn't appear to be. So that's a manufacturing subsector, or a sector, which we prioritize all of those minus the 3.
I'd like to amend my motion if the seconder would be comfortable with keeping the NAICS code for the nursing care facilities as a priority industry, with the caveat that I will continue to question those applications, making sure that they increase those wages for those that are nurses or in the pipeline to become nurses. Thank you.
Are there any other comments from the public regarding that little change? All those in signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And next we have, Eric.
There you go.
I pretend it's the talking end. So I see the people in their cars driving that way. All right, thank you, panel. I'll start with the first of my 2 action items. It's a nice segue from the NAICS codes discussion we just had into the other purpose that ETP uses the NAICS codes for, which is to determine whether a particular industry or sector has out-of-state competition. So specifically our regulation on out-of-state competition at Title 22 of the California Code of Regulations, Section 4416, has in subsection I a list of NAICS codes where we deem certain industry sectors or subsectors to be automatically exempt from the requirement to demonstrate that they face out-of-state competition in order to receive ETF funding. One of the currently listed subsectors is 511 publishing industries except internet. As Jerry mentioned, last year the federal government updated the NAICS codes as they do every 5 years. They eliminated 511 subsector and replaced it with 513 publishing industries. But this is not just a simple renumbering and renaming. They actually took the internet publishing industries that were covered under a separate code, added them in together with the not internet publishing industries, and now we just have a combined publishing industries NAICS code. So because that is a substantive change, it has the actual effect of expanding the exemption in our regulation to include some employers, the internet publishers that were not previously exempt under our regulations. It's a substantive change. We need to have the panel approve that change before we can engage in the process of changing that regulation. One additional change is to delete the year 2002 that the regulation currently has in front of the NAICS designation, so that there's no confusion that we're using whatever the current version is and not the 2002 version. So staff is asking that the panel approve the proposed revised text that you were given in your panel packet for Regulation 4416. And we're further asking that the panel authorizes the legal unit to initiate the formal rulemaking process and to be able to evaluate and respond to any public comments we receive during that process without having to bring the action back to the panel. If after receiving those comments, legal feels we need to make some substantive changes to the regulation based on the comments, we will bring those back to panel for approval. Any questions or comments first?
Just a suggestion, if you do deem that necessary to make those substantive changes, to first go to policy committee. We'll have a robust discussion there and opportunity for the public to better engage.
Yes, of course.
Any other questions or comments from the panel?
I say so moved. Looking at my-
To approve the revised text of regulation.
Okay, here we go. Motion to approve the attached proposed revised text of 22 CCR Regulation 4416, governing the out-of-state competition, and to authorize the legal unit to initiate the formal rulemaking process based on the approved text, and further authorize the legal unit to review, evaluate, and respond to public comments after the 45-day comment period without further panel approval unless the legal unit suggests making substantive changes from the previously approved text, in which case the legal unit must bring back the proposed changes to panel for approval, first going to policy committee.
Do I need to repeat that? Okay, so are there any, is there, okay, there's a first and a second. Is there any comments from the public?
No.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Ayes have it.
Thank you, panel. And just to let you know, it is our intent that all future regulations packages that come before you will go to policy committee first, at least once. There might be even more, depending on how large the package is. So turning to the second of my action items, we're asking the panel to rescind its current bylaws. Our implementing legislation requires that the panel adopt by regulation, procedures for conducting its business meetings, as well as disclosure of contacts between panel members and interested parties. So ETP has never actually gone through the formal state-required administrative rulemaking process to adopt those rules. The panel has adopted bylaws. We've looked at those again from a legal lens and don't believe that they qualify as the regulations contemplated by the statute. And so we are asking the panel to rescind the current bylaws so that legal can go ahead and prepare draft regulations that we will bring first to policy committee and then to the panel for approval so that we can implement those procedures as the statute requires.
Is there any questions or comments from the panel?
Makes a lot of sense to me. I motion to move a motion to repeal the existing panel bylaws effective immediately, and staff will then prepare draft regulations for the scheduling and conduct of panel meetings, the disclosure of contacts from interested parties, and to be reviewed and approved by the panel prior to initiating the formal APA rulemaking process. And in the meantime, panel may proceed according to Robert's Rules of Order, its governing statutes, and regulations.
Second.
There's a first and a second, and we will turn to the public for any comment. Very good. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Ayes have it. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you again, panel.
I believe we are moving forward to the presentation on the first funding, but do we want to we for Stuart?
Here.
Okay, all right, so we'll go ahead and turn to Heather Miguel for the presentation of apprenticeship funding for fiscal year 23-24.
Good morning. So Gretchen, you're off the hook. This is a discussion/info item, so you don't have to make any long motions. So I'm just here to present, this was taken to policy committee last week. I think we had a really good discussion with some of the panel members, but so I'll brief you quickly on the memo that's in your panel packet. So over the last 3 years, we've been working to refine the apprenticeship application process. The biggest accomplishment that we've made over the last couple of years is to move to an open annual application period, allowing us to fund all of the apprenticeship programs at one time. Even more critically, it allows us to identify the apprenticeship demand all at one time. This has allowed us to fund all of the apprenticeship applications that come before us, which in years past was something that we struggled with. So we're very happy that we have been able to accomplish that. We'll be doing the same thing this fiscal year. So the application period for the apprentices will open Monday, May 1st, and it will close Friday, June 9th at 5 p.m. We do plan to bring all of the proposals for this fiscal year for the apprenticeship program to the September panel. So just wait a couple months, you'll be hearing from me a lot. The other thing that we've really been able to do this year is, as we make refinements to the program, is really partner with some of our state agencies that work in the apprenticeship space. So we've been forging a new partnership with the California Community College's Chancellor's Office around the apprenticeship program, and we're looking to align some of the RSI funding with the ETP funding in coming years. In addition, we've really been relying and deepening our partnership with the Division of Apprenticeship Standards, or DAS, who oversee the Registered Apprentice Program statewide. Interestingly, DAS is utilizing ETP's new higher wage in their new AIF funding, which funds apprenticeship programs in the non-traditional sectors. We, as ETP, also rely on DAS to ensure that the funding requests that we receive from our apprenticeship applications are accurate and aligned with the numbers that they have, as well as ensure that we have their up-to-date program standards, so we are all kind of aligned on what their approved curriculum is. There's also a timeline attached on the second page of this memo that does also highlight some of the work that we've been doing at the IACA committee, as well as the CAC committee. I had the pleasure to present in front of the IACA committee earlier this week, Tuesday, feels like a lifetime ago. And my colleague and fearless leader, Willie Atkinson, will be presenting at the CAC next week. He gets to go to Monterey. I got to sit in front of my home computer. So here we are. So we're really pleased of the partnerships that we're forging with DAS, and Adele Burns and Chief Eric Rood have been really incredible partners for us in that space. Along those lines, I'm pleased to say, after a discussion with panel member Newsome and Chair Betancourt, excuse me, Eric Rood will be presenting at our September panel meeting. Part of what we are asking that he talk to is the governor's goals of 500,000 apprentices over the next couple of years. So the other thing that we've been implementing this year is a funding methodology for the apprenticeship programming. Again, this is to create some equity within the apprentice space and to ensure that all of the applications that we receive are funded. So we implemented this last year. I think that we're really trying to refine that and hone in on the best way to do this. First and foremost, I would be remiss if I did not recognize a member of ETP's data analytics unit, Joseph Eisenrich, who is right there, for his help. He's really been helping Willie and I understand the data around who we are funding in the apprentice program, as well as working with us on an apprenticeship funding methodology. We are still refining this. I think we'll really dig into this once we know what the funding demand is around these projects. We will come up with a per trainee funding cost that we will use to determine the contract cost for this coming fiscal year. I know panel member Newsome did ask that we bring kind of some information around that when we fund these in September, and we will be happy to do that. So looking ahead, I've been saying this, so everyone's sick of hearing it, but change happens incrementally in government, as we all know. The political scientist in me knows that. So we are going to plan to bring additional changes to the program, refinements, ways to make it better. We're certainly open to your input on that. Part of the discussions that we had during committee were around DEI initiatives, as well as I'm really thankful to panel member Betancourt, as well as panel member Newsome, for the conversations around looking at new apprentices, looking at the graduation rates, sort of looking at the programs and who they're bringing in. So we do plan to incorporate into the proposals for this year new apprentices and some of those other pieces that we discussed. The DEI initiatives we're hoping to bring in the next couple of years. Finally, as you can see at the end, the proposed timeline, I mentioned the CAC and IACA committees. I've also mentioned the funding windows. There is a informational session that will be occurring Tuesday, May 9th, for interested folks around the apprenticeship funding. And so with that, I'm open to any questions that panel may have. And thank you for taking the time, no motion, and hope that was as short as it could be. So,
Thank you very much, Heather.
yeah, thanks.
Any questions or comments from the panel? Okay, next we have, civic makers presentation and recommendation.
No, there's a member of the public.
Okay, let's go ahead and, have public comment. Thank you very much. Just state your name and. I think, is there a phone there? Yeah, there's a phone. Speak loud.
Okay. Rob Sanger, Build Within. I'm with a startup company that's helping apprenticeship programs get started. And, you know, we've got about 12 roles that are approved from the Department of Labor. We're going through the DAS process right now. So, you know, I guess my question is, how do we serve, you know, we're going to be serving companies that are starting apprenticeships throughout the next year. But if ETP funds all the projects in the first 2 months, and these are typically the projects that have been funded the last few years over and over again, how do we serve new companies that want to start apprenticeship programs? And I don't know if you have the answer, but something you consider as you're funding these programs.
Do we have any other public comment? So, go ahead and, are we gonna have a
Chairperson, could we entertain a bio break for 5 minutes?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, please.
We're gonna take a 5-minute break, recess, we'll see everybody back at 11.
Yeah, no.
Hey, you too. Phones are on. Oh, okay. I have 8. I'm
We have Secretary of Labor, Mr. Stuart Knoxer, please. Mr. Knox.
Welcome on, welcome to that, of course, and thank you. And also, Mike, who is a member as well, so welcome aboard. Great team here, as you know, 5 years. Welcome. So anyway, and thank you. First, sorry. Right, welcome, and,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, we don't get that unless questions.
He's here, now's the chance to do it. Okay, let's go ahead and hear from Civic Makers.
Okay, hello, everyone. My name is Judy Brown. I'm here to represent the team at Civic Makers. My dear colleague, Virginia Hamilton, who can't be here today, Brittany Henry, who is our designer, and Leah Tremblay Adams, who has largely been on the back end. I want to give a big thanks to my friend over here who helped. This is really more of a show, not tell kind of thing, so we were able to make this so that you all can see it. I think whomever's controlling the slides, if we could online, if we could just try to map. Okay, great. So we're making it work. I also just want to say a huge thanks to my colleagues here at ETP and the design team. We're so happy to be here to present all of this great work. So without further ado, I'm just going to stand right here. We're all okay with this? Okay, all right. So some of you have seen us quite a few times throughout the last few months, and some of you who may be online at home have done some interviews with us and have done some sessions with us. So we were here to really sort of review the first in, first out application process and build some capacity with ETP managers and staff for human-centered design, which is a methodology that my firm has been using for nearly 10 years with clients in all types of private sector, mostly municipalities throughout Northern California, but we do some work with the great state of California as well. So we are doing a really interesting hybrid here of both building capacity internally for this collaborative problem-solving methodology and applying that methodology to reviewing the process at ETP. So we are, I already said all of this. I want to ask the design team members who are here, could you stand and give a little wave? You know how we like to give waves in our little boxes? So these folks have been doing both their full-time jobs that they do to bring all of the great work at ETP to life, and they have also been learning and applying human-centered design right alongside us. So thank you so much. Our final deliverables here in this phase of the work, which was really about uncovering where there might be opportunities for improvement along the people and processes and potentially policies within the ETP application process. What we have is a prioritized list of 18 process improvement ideas. Today, we are going to show you 5 prototypes that we have been working on. We have a summary of an engagement of all of the engagement that's been done today and some proposed next steps. And here's our agenda for the day, because of course we're going to put together a little agenda. I think we're less, so I'm not sure how much time we have, but I'll just quickly go through a recap of the approach. Some of you, certainly panel members, both of whom have seen us come and speak at the panel or online or have done interviews with us, have certainly seen that approach. A summary of our ideation and evaluation phases, and then again, my colleagues in the design team are going to present the prototype. We'll talk a little bit about next steps. So I won't get into this too much, but the approach and method here, human-centered design at ETP, there's 5 phases: empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. Here's the timeline and activities. We did stakeholder interviews, I believe 33 between September and October. Then we've been analyzing the data from November to January. We did an in-person ideation session here back in March. And here in April, we've been prototyping and testing ideas. Thank you to my, thank you for advancing the slides over there. I have like 3 different ways that I'm seeing these slides, so it's really great. Here's a little bit about the empathy interviews and data analysis. Now I'm going to sit down too. So we worked with a lot of internal stakeholders. We talked to external stakeholders, and then another layer of external stakeholders was for applicants. So we've talked to panel members, management team members, department team members, field office team members, priority industry consultants, single employer consultants, MECs, applicants, and then applicants with support of consultants. And then we took all of that data and we synthesized it. Here are the common themes that really came up. As you can see, application criteria was by far the most. Internal governance structure came up second, external communications, and then we go down to feasibility, accessibility, education, system notification, application timeline, customer service, internal communication, and apprenticeship. So all of these themes came out of these essentially hour-long interviews that we conducted with folks. So we took those and we came up with these key themes, one of which is that the current perception across stakeholder groups is that the application process does not actually follow first in, first out methodology. And in doing some research on that methodology itself, the first in, first out is kind of like when you're at the grocery store and if you already know, you're going to pick the thing that's furthest behind because it actually is the freshest. So this application process may or may not be the best approach for evaluating proposals for funding within state government. There was a lack of transparency into the application timeline, and then there was actually pretty low awareness of ETP as a program, and as a result, new applicants were primarily coming to the program through word of mouth. In ideation and evaluation, this is where we explore potential solutions and evaluate them. So this is essentially what this has looked like. We surfaced 6 challenge opportunities, generated 250 plus ideas with staff during the ideation session. And I know if Reg were here, he would really want me to talk about the carrier pigeon idea because that one just really resonated with a lot of people. 1, because it was absurd, but 2, because the point of the ideation is really to try to think outside of the constraints that we have. And then we take those ideas and we sort of layer our constraints back on top of them to prioritize. Out of those 250 ideas, we prioritized 18. And then today, again, we're going to share with you the 5 ideas that are ready for immediate prototyping and testing. One of the ways that we look at whether ideas can be brought to life is to use a prioritization screen called desirable, feasible, viable. So the ideation session confirmed desirability. Do the people who are closest to the work feel as though some of the recommendations and ideas are going to make that work better? Impact and effort mapping we did, that my team did. So there's been also, I do want to mention that the raw data, everything that was shared within the interviews belongs to civic makers. We synthesized the interviews and shared that. The best practices in the type of user research we do is that the insights are aggregated and anonymized so that we create a space where people feel they can be honest. Then we did a meeting with the executive staff to evaluate this feasibility and viability, where we're really looking at if we have an idea, like carrier pigeons, for example, can it be funded and can it be built? Now, I actually looked into the carrier pigeon idea, and it's not feasible or viable. So sorry if you got excited about that. But the 5 prioritized ideas here listed: a video tutorial, public list, push notifications, translating a submitted application directly into a proposal, and then creating an ETP training department unit. So we took these and we mapped them around high impact. We put them on an impact and effort matrix to understand what of the ideas were going to be in a really nice area of potentially high impact, potentially low effort. This slide just shows us why we prototype in the first place. It's so we can test whether these ideas are actually going to be useful to improving the process for a variety of stakeholders, as opposed to if we just went with our own brilliant ideas and put it out into the world, it actually didn't work for folks. There are many examples of which we have done this. So These prototypes are meant to be low fidelity. So this is an example of a low fidelity prototype. You can see it's made out of paper. So much like our technology companies that we're talking about in the different industries, we don't code and build the entire product before we test it first with stakeholders. So that's the same basic idea that we're bringing into this work here. A little bit more here about the purpose. Again, the low fidelity prototypes and we're testing. We did hold a session with some of our external stakeholders as well, where we presented the prototypes and got feedback with them. And the feedback, so also I just want to mention the low fidelity prototypes that you are seeing today are just that. These are ideas that have been translated into something visual or something that you can actually interact with. They are not final. Nothing has been written into any kind of code, however we want to interpret that. These are just an example of the ideas being brought to life. So now I get to hand it over here in just a moment when I get to this slide, which is prototype 1. Thank you over there. Video tutorials, and Phil is going to be presenting that. Go ahead, Phil. Thanks, Phil.
Alrighty, good morning, panel members. I will be presenting prototype 1, video tutorials on how to complete applications. So currently in the application process, we have help bubbles that include text. The intent of prototype 1 is that the videos are embedded into the application itself, replacing these help bubbles with text. ETP would ensure that the information in the videos includes relevant information and is kept up to date. Now, regarding the process, the applicant would go to the ETP website to complete the application. The applicant would then receive instructions referencing the help links within the application and how to view the library list of additional videos. While completing the application, the applicant can select the help link to view a video to address their question on that step. A video will play, providing an audio narrative and visuals on how to complete that step. At the end of the video, a question will pop up asking if this was helpful. If not, it will direct the applicant to another video, an FAQ, or a help desk. The help link to these videos will be available in each section of the application. Prior to submitting the application, a video regarding a review will be provided. Moving on to the intended outcomes of this prototype. Externally, this prototype provides clarity on what is required to complete an application and information on program aspects. Internally, this prototype will result in the majority of submitted applications being completed correctly, improving processing time and efficiency. I will now turn it over to my colleague, Heather Miguel, to present prototype 2.
I got the easy one. So this prototype was to publish a published list of all of the applicants that are currently in the queue waiting to be funded. So when we prototyped this a couple weeks back, we came up with 2 options. I'm not going to read these Post-its. I'm not going to read the Post-its on the slide here, but the first option is an automated option, where as folks apply for funding, we have an automatic list that automatically, said that twice, populates on our website so folks know who has applied for funding and who is currently in the queue. The second, and that sort of depends on like IT capabilities and those kinds of things. Initially, when we did this prototype internally, this was the preferred option, which is why you see as much on the slides. The second option is that staff internally would compile a list weekly, monthly, whatever we deem necessary, and then post that to the website. So a little bit of a more manual process. The thing that is great about this is folks know where they are. This also, in the application process, the applicants, this also reduces some internal work. We get a lot of questions from applicants, where am I, who's next, et cetera, et cetera. So one thing I will say from our stakeholder sessions a couple of weeks ago, I think actually most folks preferred option 2. And there were also some conversations around potentially putting in some kind of metrics by which to judge an application for quality prior to posting on the website. So the sentiment around that was that if an application is obviously not going to be funded for a number of reasons, we would then not post that on the website. since it was obviously not going to be funded. So really great, robust conversation around this during our stakeholder session. Pretty simple, a number of ways that this could be implemented. And for the following two prototypes, Ilya Lonitz from our application and assessment unit will walk you all through that.
Good morning. My name is Ilya. I'm staff at ETP here. So prototype 3 is for a push notification for status changes. So currently, right now, when an applicant starts, they get different statuses. So when they submit the application, they're in a submitted status. When they move into eligibility, they go into an ineligibility status, and so forth throughout the whole process. So this prototype the idea is that each time a status changes, there would be an automatic push notification built within our Cali4 system that would notify them, the applicant and the subcontractor, of the changes. So the impact is that it would allow the applicant and subcontractors to have those notifications, be more aware of where they are moving throughout the process, and it would also potentially help staff to have less communication that they have to deal with in updating those statuses. And then I'll go ahead and move to prototype 4. So prototype 4 is for ETP to create a training unit. Currently, ETP does not have a training unit. So the idea of creating this training unit would take all the training materials, resources for the ETP programs and put it in one central location. That training team would develop and make sure that all training is consistent, and then deliver that training to all staff so that all staff receive consistent training. The training would occur anytime new staff are being onboarded. It would be anytime there are updated or changes to the training materials. So anytime a change occurs with ETP that requires training, that would also occur from the training team, and regular annual refreshers that would just keep everyone up to date with what the programs are with ETP. And then I'll go ahead and move to the 5th one. So the 5th one is to translate a submitted application to a proposal. So the current process right now, when an applicant submits their application, there's a lot of back and forth between the applicant and ETP to take that application in the format that it is and move it into the proposal format. So this idea would be to have a direct translation from the application right into that proposal format, which would free up the development staff to allow a lot more opportunity to assist the applicants in their projects, not have to do a lot of the kind of nitty-gritty work of that translation process. And this obviously would have a lot of results externally, both in transparency for what the applicant puts and what goes before the panel. And then internally, like I said, it would save a lot of time for development staff and allow them for that additional capacity. And so that's the final of the 5th prototype.
Okay, so what's next? We are making some recommendations for planning and implementation timeline. Of course, even just hearing about those different prototypes, there are different degrees of, again, impact, effort, resources that might be needed to bring them to life. Some may really only take a flip of a switch. Some might take some more thoughtful and organized planning and implementation. So just an example of what an implementation work plan might look like. Again, some of them are the lower effort, higher impact. Some we have high impact, high effort. So there's also, these are the 5 that we prototyped out of a list of 18 that were prioritized from the 250 ideas that were generated with staff. And I do want to, again, mention that those ideas came also from data that was collected from all different types of stakeholders, including our applicants, our consultants, and quite a few different types of stakeholders. So it wasn't just from the brilliant minds of the staff, if that makes sense. That's it.
Well, thank you very much. That was a great presentation, great information, and
a lot of good thinking going on, so thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Are there any comments from the panel?
I have a question. I think, Phil, you mentioned, prototype 1, and you also mentioned a help desk. Can you tell me what the nature of that is? Because some help desks are not really useful.
And again, it's still in a prototype phase, but that conceptually is our idea behind that.
Thank you. Excellent, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the panel? Any questions, comments from the public?
Hello, Philip Herrera, Herrera and Company. Just a quick comment about it. I participated in a lot of this. Great job, everyone, on this, by the way, especially staff and the consultants. If we're not going to use a first in, first out criteria, then it is going to mold into some sort of competitive criteria, right? Whether we like it or not. So I've always proposed the idea that that ETP staff score these things somehow, right? Look at the criteria, the metrics that you evaluate, whether it's the industry or the wages, the occupation, but knowing your place in line is important, but also knowing how you measure up against the other applications is probably just as important. I'm not saying that you take the best and put them automatically to the first of the line, but it may be helpful for the whole process to see, how you measure up against the other applications. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you for your comment, Trevor.
Not my phone.
Please get up there. Are there any other comments from the public? Okay, great, thank you. Now, does the panel have any items that they'd like to add to any future agenda? Okay, so that being said, any public comments on matters not on the agenda? Okay, do we have a motion?
Motion to adjourn?
There's a motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oh, perfect. No, we definitely want to hear all the comments. Make it not that easy.
Well, good morning. This is Annie Rafferty. Sorry, I know everybody was ready to just jump out. I didn't hit the raise hand quick enough, but thank you. I just wanted to say, while we were on the consent agenda with the other community colleges, the additional CCCF funds, just wanted to say thank you for the continued support of the panel of our work together. Our goal is to expend those funds and ensure that we're working with our companies. And we had a couple of really good examples and stories to share of the impact of those, in particular up here in the north, with a number of our orchard machinery and manufacturing companies, and how some of those workers are receiving, both in Spanish and in English, some job relations training, and those workers are earning a nice wage between $20 and $25 an hour. And Carrier Family Farms, with a project that we have, their walnut orchard company and food processing, and they have a new building and expansion, and we've been supporting their operation with that. So these additional funds are going to continue to really help our efforts with those clients locally here. And I know the other colleges have some examples too, but I know it's the end of the meeting, but just wanted to say thank you for the support of our work.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Annie. Are there any other public comments? Thank you, everybody. This meeting is adjourned.